Perfect. Thank you, Matthew. Much appreciated. Right. Firstly, let's make sure can you see the presentation? Are we all good?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, as Matthew kindly said, yeah, I've got pretty much 15 years experience in the recruitment industry and specifically in tech recruitment. I know Cardiff University, I know the Software Academy very well. I also know sort of what position you guys are in at the moment. So I imagine you've got a lot of things on your mind. I'm sure you have with the pandemic and with studies, etc. But I'm trying to give you an overview really of what a CV is and give you some real pointers in terms of improving how it looks and to make it best available to employers. So quick sort of overview really. And the background to the CV, believe it or not, the CV has pretty much been going probably 45 years now. There's been little intricacies that have changed over time. People have added certain things. There's been design elements that have come into it. But really, the fundamentals are still the same, and it's still the best way to sort of portray yourself to the new employer. The main purpose of a CV, loads of people, there's different views to this. So as I've said, I'm going to give you my view of what I would recommend, but people tend to think I'll just list everything I possibly can about my work experience and who I am. That's not the purpose of a CV. The purpose of the CV is to be very, very specific in terms of who you're applying to, linking the technology, linking the industry sector, and it's trying to create a tailored version of your CV that best represents you for that job. So during this presentation, I'll talk you through a little bit about that. Just to sort of whet your appetite really about how important this document is going to be for you, there's a couple of key statistics I was looking at. So over nearly half of CVs given to employers that are over 2 pages are discounted. That is a crazy feat. For people who want to list all their information, they're doing themselves a disservice potentially. Secondly, a recruiter like me, who has been sort of schooled in looking at CVs from, like I said, 15 years ago, a recruiter will spend on average 10 seconds looking at each CV. 10 seconds. So that tells me and should tell you that we need to make it stand out very, very early on. And I'll give you really good ways of doing that. On a typical job, over 3/4 of applicants are not right. Why would I say that? Not to discourage you from applying. That's not the reason. The reason is that don't be disheartened if you don't have 100% of the skills. There are so many people that apply to jobs that think they have to have everything. They don't. I can tell you now, I've sat in boardrooms with employers and the job spec is a wish list. But what you've got to do is make your CV and cover sheet best represent that wish list. So hopefully you can get to the next stage, which is the interview. This was a really interesting one, and I guess I can understand it. 52% of people who write a CV feel they need to lie. So that is a crazy stat, that half of people feel they need to over-exaggerate or lie on their CV. That, again, you don't need to, and I'll talk you through that. But these are sort of statistics really that just illustrate how important this document is going to be for you. So onto the structure. Again, if you're going for web design jobs or creative jobs, yes, you could potentially put some element of creativity into this. But for me, I'm going back to basics, because basics for me will always win. So 2 pages of A4 on a Word document or a PDF. A lot of people tend to use PDFs these days because obviously people can't change the document for security reasons. Times New Roman, Calibri or Arial, there's lots of different fonts, but stick to what's presentable. Most businesses, most employers will look for sort of standard fonts. So I would say stick to those. And then there's probably people out there that you're looking at thinking, I need to put in this, I need to put in that. Stick to the basics. Your name, your contact details, your personal statement, which I'm going to show you is really, really important, experience, and so don't be put off that you don't have a lot of work experience. Your main selling tool now is your degree and what you've done in your degree to showcase to an employer. Training, and I'll talk you through a little bit about that as well, because I think that's massively underplayed. Hobbies and interests, and I put a little star by that because I'm doing a talk actually on Friday about this. There is an element of bias that could come into that, which we will talk about. But actually, I think it's really, really important that you put a lot about who you are, what you're passionate about, because it may make you stand out to an employer over somebody else. And then references at the bottom, it's a historic must do in a CV, but I start that as well because I'm not so sure these days that references need to be given at this stage. Okay, so I'll go through the CV bit by bit. Contact details, full name. If you've got lots of different middle names, you can choose. If you want to list them all, great. Totally up to you. But you just need to get your full name in there. Full address. Again, starred this one because due to sort of GDPR, there is a reason to say that people don't need your address. As long as they've got some form of contact for you, be it an email address or social account, then you don't need it. But I will always push back and say when you're working with a recruiter or you're working with a talent team, they're going to want some sort of record for you. So most of them will be on a database and they will ask for your address. So personally, I put it on there. Email address goes without saying, but keep it to be what you want it to be in terms of a work. Don't just use one that you used when you were younger, and it might not be how do I put this right for the work for your work and professional outlook. Mobile number or home number. A lot of us these days don't tend to have home numbers, so mostly mobile number, so list that. Social channels, and I've put here that are relevant. So what social channels do you want your employer or potential employer to see? So a lot of people that I've done this with over time, it's going to be LinkedIn, it's going to be Twitter. If Twitter's personal and you've got a lot of different personal attitudes and behaviors that you don't want necessarily to be seen, then don't put it on there. But I would always say LinkedIn mandatory. Make sure your LinkedIn is up to speed. Make sure you put relevant content on there. And also, I'd probably say Twitter, but obviously that's personal and dependent on what you want. This is a big one. And this is something I think a lot of people don't do. I think they're starting to in the last sort of 2 years. A link to your online portfolio. There is so much, there are so many tools out there now where you can showcase your ability. So thinking like GitHub, there's Stack Overflow, personal website. You need to get across how you can display your technical ability over somebody else. So I put that in your contact details as well as a link. Someone told me actually, someone quite technical said, yes, that's good, but don't forget, some people won't be able to access it. So you need to look at like README files or how-tos. So make sure if someone clicks on it, they're able to access it easily enough. Okay, so I did a session on this probably about 4 months ago, and this is something I highlighted hugely. Personal statement is a historic thing to do, really, but actually I think it's really, really important, and people have lost the significance of this. So the personal statement needs to be sort of 5 to 7 lines. It needs to, you almost have your contact details at the top, then next you have your personal statement. Some put it in a border, some don't, but it needs to be very, very hard hitting. This is probably the first thing someone's going to read. So key competencies of you as an individual. So that could include being a good team player, working well as part of, working well under pressure, and being innovative, creative, adaptable, work on your own. There's lots of different competencies that you can bring out about yourself. Similar, but not the same, is your strengths. So if you've in uni done, I don't know, project in Java or I don't know, managed a huge data set and looked at dependencies in your degree, then these are the things you want to bring out. These are your strengths. Key achievements, don't worry that you haven't got huge achievements in a working capacity. That will come later in your career. So what is your big achievement? No doubt probably in your degree, you're going to do some sort of dissertation or some sort of project. So you need to really bring that out, but make sure it stands out in terms of an achievement. Why is it an achievement? It was good because of X, Y, and Z. And the last point on the personal statement is the career goal. Tell the employer, tell HR professional, tell a recruiter what you want. So my career goal at this time is to join an exciting company within, you could say an industry, you don't have to, within a financial services industry, and I am looking for a junior software engineer role, or I'm looking for a graduate data science role. If you put that in there, recruiters are going to know exactly what you're looking for, and then they're more likely to call you. Okay, this is something I swear by, and I think it will help you no end. After that, put in a skills matrix. This is quite open to interpretation because some people will say, how can you prove proficiency? And that's fair. But a recruiter and somebody who isn't particularly technical need it in their face. They need to know what their skills are, what your skills are. Why? Because they do skills match searches. So when they look at LinkedIn, or when they look at job boards, or when they look at the CV, they're looking for matches to the job description or the job advert. So you've got to make it stand out. And I say personal statement, skills matrix, and I always put year last used, which is probably going to be in the current year. So it just hammers home you've got experience of that. And then your proficiency. And be honest, if I don't know, if you haven't dealt with Terraform or you haven't dealt with, I don't know, C++, put 2, but you don't have to list everything. If 6 or 7 of them are ones, don't list them unless it's relevant to the job. What you really want to bring out, and the whole point of this is for someone to go, right, this person's got Java, this person's got Python, let's have a quick look at his work experience or his degree, and then we'll take him to interview. I just think it really, really hammers home that you've got that technology experience and it's there on a page before anything else. Okay, so your best selling tool at the moment is your academic experience. I might be wrong, there may be other people that have got relevant work experience, but really your academic experience is what you want to highlight. So simply list the university, the college, or the school, so in your case university, the dates to and from, the degree, the course title, key modules, but make sure they're relevant to the job application. If, for example, you're applying for a software engineer and you've done a degree in, it's probably all relevant these days to software engineering, but I don't know, it could be creative design using Photoshop. You might want to put it in because it might be relevant, but actually you probably want to stick to the core competencies that are listed in the job description. And then the key projects within those modules, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute, but that's the key point to bring across. So I'll just show you how it would look. So here, obviously, you've got Cardiff University, you've got your course title, that's on the left-hand side. That'll probably be in bold and italics, probably just bold. And then on the right-hand side will be your dates in terms of when you started and when you're going to finish. If it's still present, just put present rather than the date. Like I said, don't list them all, but list the ones that are relevant. So year 1 here, I put OO programming, 2-1 description of what you got taught. Year 2, DevOps, and then year 3. But I'm always listing the grade because I want to know how well you picked that up and how well you've scored. But I'm always putting in the technology, what you learned. 2 reasons. 1, because obviously it's good to tell someone what you studied, but secondly, it's reinforcing the keywords, constantly looking at these keywords. So in the skills matrix, we mentioned Java and Python. Go down another step and there's Java, Python mentioned again. So recruiters and employers are looking at this, and if they're keyword matching, you're going to come up higher in the rankings. The golden bullet here is make sure, certainly in year 3, you need to give a lot of information about the industry project, and I keep hammering home, but link that back to the job description. So if the job description is a junior software engineer for, I don't know, a Java role, make sure that the industry project highlights relevant programming experience, choices of technology, successes you had, things that you learned. There's a lot of things you can get in there about showcasing your project, but this is your way of identifying you compared to someone else. So it's very, very important to list everything you can in there. So I've done these presentations for a while. If work experience is the thing that you want to bring out as your key experience, then my advice is list the latest job. So always make it in chronological order. It's got to be, the amount of CVs I used to see of people, I had to scroll through like 4 pages to get to what they currently do. It's a big, big no-no. Make sure everything that you do right now is current and it's at the start of the work experience section. Similar to what I've said, company in bold, job title bold and italics. On the right hand side, the dates, and then, as I put here, sometimes people tend to list the sector of the company. The reason you do that is because it'll be the one way for somebody to look at it and go, oh, right, he or she has got relevant industry experience, especially if your project was in that industry or you worked with a client on a client project that was in that industry. You've got to get that in because they're going to be really interested in that. And secondly, if someone else hasn't put it in and you have, that's a tick in your box. Your role within the company, daily duties, always again linking to the job specification, and then the projects. So you're building up a theme. If it's academic, if it's work experience, it doesn't matter. You're highlighting your experience, but always making it relevant to the job description or the job advert when you're applying. And then I put here the golden bullet is your key achievements. Just at the bottom, if you can, list your key achievements whilst at that company. This is a chance to really hammer home that your project was really good, you delivered on time, you saved the company money. Lots of different things that you can bring out just to make yourself different to every other CV that someone's got. Okay, so I've sat in your shoes. You're thinking, I'm finishing my degree, I don't have huge amounts of work experience, and I don't have huge amounts of training because I haven't been trained. That's fine, but there is so much you can do online these days that can really emphasize how much time you invest in yourself and also what else you can bring to an employer. So don't miss this out. I think this is really key. List any work-based online accreditations or training that you've done in extracurricular activities. There's lots of things out there at the moment where you can, so Code Academy, for example, you could, for a certain amount of money, or I think some are even free, you can even go on YouTube and learn certain modules these days. List them because it's relevant. It gives you a chance to showcase that you've got more ability than just your degree. So if there's any online learning platforms that you've invested in or spent time learning that you think's credible, put them in there. Secondly, there are so many, and I know Matt and the team push this quite a lot. There's a lot of meetups out there at the moment. There's a lot of member groups out there. There's a lot of communities out there. So if you're part of that and you've attended something, put it in there, because it just shows how keen you are because to get into the industry, but also it just gives someone an idea of the level, the desire that you have. I think it's really important, and that you're passionate about the industry. So if you attended an event on Python and automation, put it in there, because again, it's keyword matching, but also it's something they can ask about, and it just gives you that leverage over someone else that's applying. And just emphasizing what I've said, basically, you need to really, really hammer home that you have got a lot of experience, not necessarily work experience, but you've got a lot in your locker that you can offer somebody. That is your degree, that's your project, that's your training that you've done online, and then if you've attended events, that's the whole package. And then they really get an understanding of what skills you've got and how keen you are to get into the industry. Okay, hobbies and interests. A lot of people sort of struggle with this part because they think it's selling themselves. And I know that doesn't necessarily come naturally to everyone, but there's two trains of thought here. One, and this is my personal thought, I would be listing what I'm passionate about and who I am, because employers can look at this section and think, oh, that's interesting. Dave's into cycling, or Dave's travelled to New Zealand, or Dave's interested in cooking, Dave was on this competition or whatever. And they may be able to think, oh, that will work really well with certain employees we've got within the team or the group. So personally, I would be putting it in, so you can list anything. Don't be afraid to list. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be you. I need to read this document, and when I'm reading it, I know I'm sort of walking into your life. And then list potentially why it interests you. If it's unique and it's authentic, mention why it's interesting and why you're passionate about it. It'll be a good read. People will be interested in it. And then a lot of people tend to overlook this and just put little points, probably one line. That's fine, but it doesn't really emphasize who you are. All I read when I read a CV is what experience you've got. But actually, when I'm employing you, I'm not necessarily employing you for your experience. I'm employing you because of you and what you can bring to the table and what experience that you could potentially give us now, but what am I going to get in the future? And that's more personal than sort of academic. Academic and your first couple of jobs give you the foundations, and then all of a sudden you can move through and bring your personality through. So what I just want to see is a snapshot of who you are. The other way of looking at this is you don't have to list it at all. And that is because you might not want somebody to judge you based on who you are. And that is quite interesting because some people, and I've done a lot of research on this in the last 6 months, tend to hire what they know. So technology teams are very, very guilty of this. So there will be demand for, I don't know, people who support certain sports teams or people that socialize or whatever. But the best technology companies are the companies who have a very, very diverse workforce. So it's totally up to you. I'm just saying there's one way I would potentially put it in because it would showcase who you are, but I totally understand the opinions on bias in terms of maybe they should just meet you for who you are at interview. I mentioned this at the start, references. I'm going to speed through this. I don't think you need to put references at this stage. References are very important because they prove credibility, but I don't think they need to go on the CV. I think they're a waste of space, and if people want them, they'll ask for them. Normally, a reference will get asked at offer stage, and that's when you can pass on your lecturers or your personal referees. But for a CV, I don't think it's not worth putting on there. Again, I've mentioned bias because it is very, very important. It's the same with hobbies, but things like date of birth, you don't want people to judge you based on your age because people have done and potentially do. Marital status, the historic way would be always to list single, married, divorced, whatever it is, just take it out. Don't allow people to make a decision based on that. Photos, I've seen people put photos in. I don't like them personally. I don't think they necessarily need to be in there. And secondly, why would someone, don't let someone judge you based on your appearance. It's just not worth, the benefits for me don't outweigh the negatives. So, and it's a waste of space. I just wouldn't put them in there. The cover sheet. It's almost a dying art, the cover sheet, because there are so many systems and websites that allow you to put in information when you apply. But if you are going to write a cover sheet, nobody wants to read pages and pages of what you write. It's all about specifics. It's all about concise information that is relevant to the job description. Notice again, I'm honing back to the job description. Reference the job you're applying for. So the first thing you say is, please see attached my cover sheet with reference to your job, junior software engineer, and dated whenever it was. Always put that in because people may file it, people may not be sure what you're applying for, so make sure you put that in. Just be honest. Say the reason I'm applying today is because I feel, having read the job description, I have experience or academic experience in X, Y, and Z. I have worked, during my project, we worked on Java, Python, DevOps, where we did X, Y, and Z with various successes, and I learned this. That's just really hard hitting, and it emphasizes what experience is relevant. And it's a snapshot really of your CV. I think people overlook this as well. In a cover sheet, or if you're emailing a recruiter or HR, say why you're interested. Why did it why did this job really interest you? What did you read in there? Is it about their company ethos? Is it about their values? Is it about their office? Is it about their Twitter feed? Is it about the people that you know that work there? Is it that you've heard good things about it? Is it Glassdoor? Lots of different things. Get that in there because it's unique, and it's all about how you're really going to demonstrate why you want to work there and should be given that interview. And that pretty much sums it up. If you can get all those 3, 4 right, it's going to give you a resounding reason why they should interview you. And always, when you finish, it's always that, oh, does that do what I want it to do? How are they going to interpret that? What, if you read it, would they walk into your life and would you interview yourself? If you can't answer that, and it's boring, it's laboured, it's not specific, you're doing it just because you want to get it done, it's not the right thing to do. You've got to make it specific, and you've got to make it leave an impression. Someone's got to read that and go, fair play. Yeah, that's really good. Let's bring them in. And that's the key. So the conclusion, and we can go through questions. Feel free to ask as many questions as you want on this. But the amount of CVs that I read that have got spelling or grammar mistakes is frightening. It's a document that's almost sometimes seen as a bit of a pain in the ass. It's like, oh God, I got to do a CV. Oh God, I got to do this. Take your time. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure there are no spelling mistakes. Why would you give an employer the chance to look at a document that's really well written and all of a sudden they spot 2 spelling mistakes and put it in the bin? You just wouldn't do that. So you've got to make sure that the grammar and the spelling are good and perfect. I'm guilty of this. I kind of just get something done, make sure it's done, fire it off. This document could get you a good salary and a good career opportunity. Ask others to review it. If your parents, your friends, and colleagues, get them to review it, because I promise you they'll spot something you didn't spot. Again, a massive bugbear of a lot of employers. They put a file name when they save their document, completely irrelevant of what the document is. So what a lot of people want is just forename, surname, CV, and then obviously if it's saved as a PDF, it's PDF. If it's a Word doc, it's doc. But it's simple. And think about it from their point of view. Where are they storing it? Where are they putting it? They need it relevant. So put your full name with full name CV, dot. Don't have lots of different fonts. Don't have one Arial flipping to, I don't know, something creative and design led. Then you've got different colors. Stay away from it. Make it standard and make it that it reads really well. Formatting, I tend to justify most of the sort of paragraphs and make sure it flows and looks good. Again, that's open to individual interpretation, but just make sure when they read it and you look at it when you print it out, it looks presentable. Gaps. So if you, I don't know, say you had a job and you had a year out and then you went and studied, which a lot of people do, explain it. Because when someone's looking at this and they're looking at it for 10 seconds or 30 seconds, they're going to want to know. They're going to think, right, was that person just, dare I say it, being lazy? Were they not doing this? Were they not doing that? If you just put in, I traveled, or I spent time training, or I was unlucky to find a job, just put it in, because it explains the gap. And I think that's really important. The amount of feedback I get from clients when they're like, yeah, why is there a gap of 7 months there? Or why is there a gap of a year there? Then it's my job to obviously explain it. So you've got to list exactly why there is a gap. And I've mentioned this a lot, especially with recruiters. I mentioned it in the skills matrix. I mentioned it in the listing it in the modules in your degree, in your course. But have you listed enough keywords? There is nothing worse than reading a CV where they want a Java software engineer and you mention Java once and you mention it in your personal statement and you don't mention it in your degree, you don't list it in your skills. You've got to just hammer home and keep use the word over and over again, because people will match based on how many times it comes up on the CV. So I'm not telling you to like literally list Java all the way through, but you've got to keep using keywords. They've got to keep jumping out that you've got that experience. And read it over again, as I've said. Does it really highlight your key skills and experience? Does your project and your team ethic and your desire to get into a software engineering role, does that come through in this CV? If it doesn't, you've got to change it. If it does, then send it. And again, I've been guilty of this in the past, and I'm sure loads of people have. If you put links in to LinkedIn or social profiles, make sure they work. There's nothing worse than clicking on something and it just goes to a blank screen. It doesn't make you look very good either. We're all in technology. We need to get that right. So make sure you double click them and just make sure they work and go through. Again, ask someone else, when they click it, where does it go? It is daunting writing a CV, and it does move you into that uncomfortable situation of where, oh God, I've got to sell myself. Oh God, I've got to talk about myself. But everyone's in that boat. It's more about trying to apply yourself in the right way, use the tips, watch this video again if you want, show them, see this presentation, but be confident, sell yourself. Definitely don't undersell yourself. This is your chance to talk about who you are and why they should interview you. If you're just sending the document because it's the right thing to do, it's not the right thing to do. You need to really, really concentrate on why they should interview you. And I've said, loads of people will be thinking, oh, there's loads of people out there. I'm not going to get this job. I'm not going to get that job. I'm telling you now, clients will look at candidates with a very well-written CV and a cover sheet with less experience, and they'll interview them over people they're not sure about with experience. So that's me. Yes, as Matt said, I've got my own business now, Sadler Recruitment. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I feel like I know what a good CV looks like and what a good candidate looks like. My website is www.sadlerrecruitment.co.uk. The links, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out. And if I can help in any way, feel free to ask.